Hello and welcome back to El Pozo, the Primera RFEF show. I'm your host, Nick Bell, for this evening, and I'm delighted to say I'm being joined by my co-host, fresh back from a trip from Madrid, Liam Banbridge. How are you this evening?
Yeah, I'm very well, actually. A little bit weary, but always a good weary to have, isn't it, really, when it means you've been to Spain, saw a couple of games, lovely weather, all good. How are your Ducks, Nick?
They're doing very well, getting very, very big. The prep from the move from the interior to the exterior is on, which I'll be very happy for because they are noisy buggers. That's what they are. But yes, very envious of your trips this weekend. And obviously, thank you very much for sending across your El Partido en Directo. Really, really cool actually to hear from both of those games. So if you haven't had a chance to listen to Liam's entry just yet, go across and check that out on our social medias. But without further ado, how was your trip to Madrid this weekend? Was it fruitful? Did you enjoy yourself?
Yeah, I think probably the second game, obviously, the Tercera RF game, Group 7 playoff game, semi-final, typical cagey kind of game that not an awful lot of goal mouth incident. And yeah, I although I don't obviously like to overplug our own endeavours, I do think it's worth going and listening to what I experienced at Gimnástica, because that was brilliant, to be honest, and it really made me see perhaps the club in a slightly different light. I mean, I've always been quite favourable to them, but I just thought that the way their fans especially dealt with what was a terribly disappointing afternoon, we're going to hear about that in a minute, aren't we? I thought it was tremendous, and it just made you think, rather than catcalls and whistles and general unpleasantness, it was just so positive. And you just thought, I really hope that the reward for that is that they're sticking by their team, and the reward for that is that they get straight back up again. So I'm very hopeful that happens for them. It was brilliant, and the people at the club looked after me tremendously. And it was lovely to speak to Sarah Martin as well, of course, who that's another thing you can catch up with on our social media. I did an interview with her, and that was lovely. And she was very positive about the experience, even though it was about to end in tears. And fingers crossed that everything goes well for her as a Sego fan, and also as a singer, because I'm sure she would love to do some more of that in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think obviously you've just touched on it there that, Gimnástica were one of the teams that we lost from Primera RFEF this weekend, but they weren't the only one. And probably the more surprising, given the size and stature of the club. I say surprising, probably not surprising to some, but it was Recreativa de Huelva. Really bad this second half of the season, haven't they, Liam? They've really not performed well, and ultimately this is their reward. And it's, always sad to see a club of this size get relegated. But, one with the history of Recca as well is kind of like a bit of a double pill to swallow, isn't it?
Yeah, very much so. I mean, you mentioned they've been really poor recently. I think they've only won 3 of the last 19, and that's just not good enough, is it? I think 1 of the last 11, I think it was actually against Yeclano Deportivo. It was the only bright spark in the last couple of months. I think Inigo Ereff was the coach at that stage. I think they changed their coach a few weeks ago. This is one of the occasions where it didn't make any difference. And I think what worries me more here, Nick, is just all the chat about what's going on off the field. Huge concerns about the future of the club, and the new owners have come in a blaze of publicity, and then sort of disappeared into the background. And now you start to wonder whether they've actually got the money. And clearly the club is in debt, and whether they've actually got the money to pay off the creditors and get things going. So yeah, a dreadful time to get relegated when things are not going well off the field either, and just really sad. I mean, it's the oldest club in Spanish football, isn't it, Nick? And it has been mismanaged a number of times over the years, and now they're back in the 4th tier. And yeah, let's hope that things pick up from over the summer.
Yeah, seemingly a club in the certainly the last decade, maybe decade and a half, that have just been taking hits, massive hits and struggles, and very, very sad to see. And, we'd like to say maybe this is the first time that we've seen new owners come in Spanish football and, maybe not living up to expectations, but it's not the first time, and it certainly won't be the last, unfortunately. But we've got everything crossed that they, managed to get back onto an even keel and, have a good assault on promotion next season in Segunda RF as well. You've already spoken about your trip to Gimnástica, but obviously there was a game being played, and unfortunately, Gimnástica had to win that game in order to stay up. They didn't they? But it's again. You probably appreciate it more now that you've been there, Liam, but sad to see them go down as well.
Yeah, so very much so. As I say, I just felt the whole atmosphere in the ground was absolutely fantastic. A huge crowd from their standards. I couldn't see many spare seats. There were lots of people, as I said on the report, standing behind the seats, which is interesting. But yeah, definitely a massive game for them. And they were up against it. They were 2-0 down. They got back to 2-2 by half time. They absolutely battered Gymnastic in the second half. And Ugodiath, who scored the winner, didn't he, against Sestao the previous weekend in injury time, 94th minute, just knocks one right wide of the post, and it's just like, oh dear, just not going to be. I mean, winning the game might not have saved them anyway. Look at the situation as things panned out in other games, but they deserve to win this game, and I was really surprised. As I say, I just thought that there was such a lot of positivity at the end, and almost like thanks to the team for giving it all that they had, and they are, relatively speaking, still a minnow in Primera RFEF terms, I would say, Gimnastica. So yeah, fantastic stuff from that club in terms of the way they dealt with a really disappointing situation, and I really hope that they rebound from that quickly. So 2 teams that were losing, 2 teams that we'd love to have back with us, really, wouldn't we, in 26, 27?
Yeah, definitely. And listening to the recording you sent across to me yesterday as well, it is definitely on my list of places to visit, not just obviously for the football side as well, but, Segovia, a very lovely part of the world, and only about an hour north of Madrid on the AVE as well. So definitely worth checking out. Talking about teams,
it's about 20 minutes. It's even quicker. But the trouble is that as with lots of AVE stations, it leaves you in the middle of nowhere. They've literally built an AVE station in the middle of the field, about a mile and a half out of town. So there are some buses that run every now and again. It's only about a €10 taxi ride. So, but yeah, it was quite a shock when I got off the AVE and just thought, where is Segovia? But yeah, it's literally
it's on that new line to A Coruña, isn't it? Is that new?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. It's literally 25 minutes to say from Chamartín, so it's really, really quick. And no, I mean, I think it cost me about, I don't know, £18-20 return, and it takes you well over an hour in the car, so 20 minutes in the train is brilliant, isn't it? But yeah, you then have to work out how to get to Segovia afterwards, and you would allow a little bit of time there as well, because the ground is absolutely nowhere near the historic area. It's sort of built right. It's quite a spread out city, and so yeah, you would want to have a bit of time. But yeah, certainly a couple of days, probably a day, or at least a full 24 hours, which I didn't have. So yeah, I'd certainly go back there definitely and watch the team and see a bit more of the city as well. So yeah, definitely one to recommend. I'm glad you've listened to my report and thought there's one you could do with doing as well.
Yes, definitely high on the agenda. But speaking about teams obviously going down, we have also got some teams coming up, and the playoffs in Segunda RF are well and truly underway. And we've already had some of the suspected big hitters fallen at the first hurdle. So just to bring you what the playoff final 2 legs will be. First of all, we've got Estepona against Caratareno, Terayol against Numancia, Torrent against Talavera, Sabadell against UCAM Murcia, Rayo Majadahonda against Real Aviles Industrial. And quite a surprise to see some of those teams in there, because a lot of those teams actually got into the playoffs at the very 11th 59th minute hour, didn't they, Liam? Because you'd be surprised to see some of the teams that have gone out. You look at La Union, Logroñés, Atlético Baleares, San Andreu, all these teams who were suspected to do quite well in this and fight for promotion to Primera RFEF have all gone there. They're stuck in Segunda for next season as well, in Segunda RFEF for next season.
Yeah, they are. I mean, I think La Union, we talked about before, didn't we, in the sense that, they had all these issues in terms of are they moving to Malaga or not, and they just sort of hit the wall the last 2 or 3 weeks, didn't they? Torremolinos pulled past them to win the league. Logroñés is the saddest one for me, fan-run club. I'd love to have seen them up there. Really disappointing to see them drop out, not even make a final, and they obviously finished second in the league, so doubly disappointing for them. Atletico Baleares, not shedding too many tears about them, not one of my favourite clubs at that level. So more than happy to see them mess it up in before they even got to the final. So they finished second, got knocked out by Teruel, and Teruel is an Aragonese team, so I was more than happy about that. I think they scored 3 goals in after the 90th minute as well, Teruel, to win 5-2 that second leg and book a final against Numancia. So there's some great teams in there. I mean, Numancia, as we know, traditionally at least Primera RFEF, if not high, played a lot of years in Segunda. A couple of teams from sort of southwest of Madrid, Cacereño, of course, which is another team potentially that could end up being a little bit of a derby with Merida if they come up and Merida don't make it into Segunda. So some really interesting teams in there. And then, of course, Torrent from Valencia at the heart of all those problems, when the storm hit and everything, and the whole area around that area was decimated by that particular storm. I think it was about 8-9 months ago now, wasn't it? But a very small team, a very modest team, who finished 5th in their group, as you say, at the last minute, and knocked out La Union. So a mixture of some big hitters left in there still. Sabadell, another team that's played quite a lot in Primera RFEF and above, and a few relative minnows. So it'll be very interesting to see how it pans out. And it'll be 2 weeks, of course. We're going to have 2 games that we'll see, and a reminder, of course, that if that second game ends level after 100, if they end level after 120 minutes, the second game, it will be the team that finished higher that goes through. There's no penalties or anything like that. I think that's how isn't that how Real Avilés got past San Antonio? There was certainly at least one team of these 10 that made it. I think it was 2-2 after extra time, but they finished higher, so they knocked out the other side. So yeah, anything else in the news anyway that you picked up this week?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think Cacereño, you're going to have to teach me how to say that one. I think Cacereño, they were in the same position as well. They went through after finishing 120 minutes as the higher place side, finished second to Guadalajara, if I remember rightly. But yes, in other news, just 2 bits of things maybe to consider. It was announced yesterday that one very well decorated player is retiring this weekend. It is, of course, Marbella's Jose Callajon. He is retiring after the game against Antequera on Saturday. He's had a very decorated career with Real Madrid, in Italy with Napoli and such. He obviously came back recently with Granada. It's interesting to see him retiring at this level, to be fair, Liam, because obviously players do tend to go out a little bit higher of his caliber, but he fancied a year with Marbella, and to be fair, he's not done really badly. Marbella's position in the table would suggest differently, but actually he's had quite a productive season. I even touted to Torremolinos fan Luke Chambers, do they not fancy just giving him a nudge and saying one last dance? Come on.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's an interesting one, isn't it? As you say, Callajon obviously impressed by the project there. There's been talk in the past about Marbella. I can't remember who it is, but there are a couple of quite high-profile players, aren't they, who got, I think, shares in the club.
Casemiro, one of them.
That's Casemiro. That's the one I'm thinking of. Yeah, so presumably Casemiro and Callajon know each other, and so he probably fancied, as you say, a season. I've seen him play a few times, and I think he's been really good. Very much not his fault that Marbella are where they are, and I've liked the fact that he's really put everything into it as well. He's not looked like he's there just to have a little stroll around. He's worked really hard and really been a team player as well. So yeah, it'd be sad for him if he goes out, with a relegation, but we'll see how that eventually ends up around about, I suppose. Is it around about 8 o'clock on the Saturday evening? We'll know if he's finishing with a low point in his career, or whether he's going to have a magical escape to bow out on.
Well, it's added impetus for it, isn't it, for him for Marbella to do well for him, and I think they've done quite a good deal on the tickets once again to get people to the the Banús Football Centre to support them on against Antequera. But more about that later. And I suppose one final bit of personal news, Liam, we're going to be trying something quite audacious on Saturday, aren't we? Because this is obviously a podcast in its infancy. We started this podcast only 9 weeks ago now. It's been so we are going to attempt to do a kind of Soccer Saturday style live stream across all 20 games on Saturday, because they all kick off at the same time, live over on our YouTube channel, which I think could be quite interesting, won't it? And we're going to pick a couple of games to watch directly, but we'll report on all the goals as they happen as well. Are you excited by the prospect, Liam, or does it daunt you like it is for me that we're going to be across 20 football games down in Primera RFEF?
I suppose the thing is that there's probably about 10 of those that are not necessarily that significant. So we will have to concentrate on the 10 that aren't. I think if we tried to cover all 20, we'd really struggle. We'll certainly update on all the goals, but perhaps in terms of talking about quite a few games don't have an awful lot of consequences to them, but there's enough that do, that I'm thinking, and I'm already looking at all the head-to-heads down the bottom, particularly on the bottom of both leagues, the goal average and the possible mini leagues and the possible 4-team mini leagues, 3-team mini leagues, etc. I'm thinking, how on earth we're going to get a head around all this. But obviously the added thing for us as well is that we've got one team in each group, haven't we, really, who we're absolutely rooting for. So it's going to be quite a nervous evening for us, I think, as well. And yeah, it's going to be great. I'm really looking forward to it. But yeah, there's certainly a bit of trepidation about what's going to happen on the field and what might happen in our respective studios during the game to make things complicated for us.
Oh, absolutely. And you know, not forgetting the big hitter in Grupo Uno as well. We've still got a title to be decided. So, yeah, let's dig into that a little bit further. So, looking at the top of Grupo Uno, it is exactly the same. I think this is like the fourth week in a row we've said this. Exactly the same at the start of the jornada. Cultu Leonesa, Ponferradina, Andorra, Real Sociedad B, and Gimnastic de Tarragona. That's not going to change now, even though the order might well do. Like you say, we get into this element of playoff jostling, which I think will be very relevant in Grupo Dos, given that Ceuta are already champions. But that gap between Cultu Leonesa and Ponferradina is back to 2 points with one game to go after that fantastic win for the home side at the weekend. Any changes in the bottom five, Liam, that we're aware of?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting one, this, isn't it? Real and Osasuna Promesas are back in the bottom five because they drew with each other. And Real very close to winning that one, but they drew. And Sestao Real Club and Lugo both won. So any two of those four teams could still be relegated, as could Alan Taylor. There's a couple more we'll throw in the mix in due course as well. But at the moment, we've got two that have gone down, obviously Gimnastica and Amorebieta. And then sitting in the relegation zone right now are Real Union, Osasuna Promesas, and Barça Athletic. So yeah, lots of goal averages to work out there, and there are a few more teams to mention when we get to that later in the show. You, I think, did the Partidos de la Jornada in Grupo Uno last week, which meant you got the partidazo of the week, Cultural Leonesa's trip to Ponferradina. Just quite unbelievable. I just think anybody who hasn't yet tuned in to Primera RFEF, if they join this weekend, even for the highlights, even for the stuff coming through on their Twitter feed, they'd be like, my goodness me, what is going on here?
Oh, it was a game which for me had everything inside it. It had the fierce rivalry. Obviously, this was a derby. You know, it had the atmosphere. So obviously, friend of the podcast, Chris Pigeon, was sending me some, you know, pictures and videos of what it was like down in Ponferrada. In the run up to the match, but then inside the stadium you had this cauldron-like atmosphere, but it was sort of silenced after the within the opening 10 minutes because Cultural took a very early lead, which sometimes can be a bad thing. Let's not forget, because obviously they needed to get the win here, or at least a draw, to get themselves promoted. And I think by doing this, he probably left too much time for Ponferradina to get back into the game, and they certainly did towards the end of the second half when Alvaro Bustos popped up with an equaliser from a header from a very brilliant free kick from the right hand side. But then that pales in comparison to the winner. We're into the 95th minute of added time. Vicente Esquerdo pops up. I think he was a second half sub as well, which makes it even better. Rifles it past the Cultural keeper, and El Doralin just goes into the raptures, doesn't it?
Quite incredible, isn't it? And I think that's his first goal of the season as well. Like, isn't that incredible? What first goal of the season? I mean, we're literally talking about 30 seconds, aren't we, away from promotion. So this is the last minute of added time, as far as I can see. And I think Chris said, didn't he, that a lot of the Cultural Leonesa fans were all ready to invade the pitch. They thought they'd done it, you know, as you would. And this little heralded substitute comes on after about an hour, and then in literally the dying embers of the game, smashes one with his left foot in the top corner. Just unstoppable.
Such a great finish. Such a great finish.
Incredible. I mean, absolutely. It was unstoppable, wasn't it? You sometimes hear that phrase overused, but this was completely unstoppable from him. And as we go to the final weekend, we still don't know who's going to be champions of Grupo Uno, which is quite incredible, isn't it?
Yeah, it you know, for the leagues down at this level, the fact we've got it so late in the season in some cases is really incredible, because you know sometimes you do tend to get some runaways. You know, you look at maybe, you know, what happened with Depor last season and Castellón in Grupo Dos as well. The excitement was around the playoffs, which I'm sure it will be once again. But the fact we're going to the final match day with it all still to play for between these two sides, these two fierce rivals, let's not forget as well, is going to be very, very interesting. And Cultu might have cause to be worried because they also come up against, you know, quite a decent side in Andorra in the last game, whereas Ponfe travelled to Sestao. So it's going to make for a very interesting live stream. Let's put it that way, Liam. How about the second partido of the week? What was it that I went for, Liam? Can you remind me?
Yeah, it was the one that we actually we just mentioned, didn't we? Real Union against Osasuna Promesas, and I think Real Union obviously will be kicking themselves out of this one. They were gifted a lead early on. Some slightly bizarre bit of defending from one of the Osasuna Promesas defenders, tries to head it past his own keeper when he's trying to. I don't know what he's trying to do. He gets it all wrong. A good save by the keeper, but the ball rebounds out to Victor San Bartolome, and he smashes it home. So they're 1-up. They hold that lead right through to the last 15 minutes, and then the visitors go down to 10 men. I think it was Sierra, the centre half for Osasuna Promesas. He's the last man. He does put his hand across Sergio Benitez's chest, but I'm not sure there's an awful lot of contact there. The referee was convinced as the last man. He goes off. So they're 1-up. They're playing against 10 men. But to be fair to them, Martin Pedro Arena then decided to score an absolute golazo for Osasuna Promesas. And what was interesting about this, Nick, for me, was that we always say the Filianos don't really care whether they stay up or go down or anything. I have to say that there was a massive bundle in the corner of this one. I think probably, even though it isn't their livelihoods at stake here, they did quite enjoy this late equaliser, the Osasuna Promesas players. And there was a ridiculous incident after that in injury time where Real Union hit a post, and then the rebound was cleared off the line, and the ball fell to Benito, and he smashed it straight at the keeper. So they could still have won it right at the end. But because the fact that they threw away that lead means, as I said before, that they're both now in the bottom five. And the only thing perhaps working in their favour, Real Union, is that they play Bilbao Athletic away next week. You've got nothing to play for. A fellow Basque side. What do you think, Nick? Do you think they'll be doing them a favour, or do you think they'll be making sure that will you keeping it real, or will they be kindly waving them through?
Keeping it real. I like that as a pun going forward. I think that'd be quite good.
I would about Athletic. Yeah, keeping it real as he would work, actually. Yeah.
Obviously, you know, my sentiments around Real Union and similar to that of Recreativa de Huelva as well. You know, this is a not a big club, but this is a historical club, a traditional club, a former Copa del Rey winner. You know, obviously they've got a very interesting backstory as well, and you know, I would like them to remain in Primera RFEF, definitely, especially the expense of Filiales. But now, destiny is in their own hands, unfortunately. And I think in the game that, you know, certainly when I watched it back, they really will be kicking themselves that they did not dominate it a little bit more, that they did not, you know, put some of those chances in the back of the net and really put, you know, Promesas to the sword, because, you know, they're staring down the barrel of it now, which is such a massive step backwards for a club that does have probably ambition of playing maybe a little bit higher one day, but it was all part of this building block that the Emery family are doing. But yeah, in terms of the third game that we looked at as well, I chose Lugo against Zamora. I thought this would be a great chance for the away side to, you know, finish the season on a bit of a high, still challenging potentially for that final playoff place. I did not take into consideration, Liam, the new manager bounce, Alex Ortiz, with a win and a draw in his first two games now. And as I just mentioned, as much as Real Union don't have destiny in their own hands, Lugo well and truly do. And yeah, essentially a great win for them. 2-0 it was at the Angel Caro. Brilliant result for Lugo, wasn't it?
Yeah, and it's a shame as soon as we paid them all a bit more attention. We were saying last week we felt we'd slightly overlooked them, and you're right, they were right still in the fight here, weren't they, for the playoffs? And certainly the gymnastic players in the game that I was watching live were nervous. You know, if Zamora had won that game and gymnastic had either lost or drawn it, that would have put gymnastic under a lot of pressure in that last game of the season next weekend. But yeah, they just didn't really perform on this one, did they, at all? Their own goal in the first half, never going to be that helpful. And then a lovely finish from Jerry Afria. This is a young man, the Ghanaian under-20 international we've mentioned before, who we can't quite work out what he's doing in Lugo.
Scoring goals, that's what he's doing.
Well, he's certainly doing that very well. I think he's on loan, isn't he, from is it Qatari club, some club in the Middle East anyway. And I'm not sure we'll see him next season in Primera RFEF. I'd love to think we would, but his first touch for this goal, brilliant, runs clear, and then as the keeper comes out, just gets one. You know, as he scoop it over the keeper's head, like cool as you like. And I'm like, wow, that's a classy goal. So brilliant from him. But the point about Zamora, I suppose, is that ultimately, you know, they are a debutant in this at this level, aren't they? And they've stayed up. And I think that, you know, they put something out pretty much just after this game saying, you know, we've done what we wanted to do. Objective achieved, basically, is what they were saying, because you know the main aim was to stay up, and that's what they've done. And well done to them. And hopefully they can push on from that next season. There were a couple of games that didn't make your partidos de la jornada, which I totally understand why they didn't. I've talked about one of them already. Gimnastic. I thought they were tremendous, as I say, in that game. It was a fantastic game, but probably wasn't worthy of place in your top three a week ago. There was another game that wasn't there, Nick. That was unbelievable. That again, I think after how things panned out in Jornada 36, we didn't really expect this coming at all, did we?
No, we really didn't, and we're referring to the shirt that's sitting behind me here. That's of Sestao River Club, and their victory against Andorra, who, you know, up until the beginning of the weekend were still within a technical shout of finishing as champions. And, you know, certainly we'll be looking at that Ponfe result now and kicking themselves, thinking we should have done better here, because we could have been in the driving seat, to be fair. But an absolutely brilliant game for them. You know, there was that comical own goal to go down 1-0 early on, but those two goals near the end and that massive save from Herrerin just sort of like epitomized the brilliance that you can get from Sestao from time to time, because, you know, we've kind of been egging them on ever so slightly, Liam. We've been wanting them to get out of the relegation zone, climb away from it. Some of the performances have been spectacular. Some of them have been borderline criminal in the way they've approached games sometimes. But it's great to see that you know, they could be in with a chance now and in charge of their own destiny of remaining in Primera RFEF for next season, which I think would be, you know, such an achievement for them too.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's brilliant. I mean, obviously, they've got a really tough test this weekend at home to Ponfe with something to play for themselves, a big something to play for. Moreover, I think for me, the only sadness about this game was that I didn't realize until I watched the highlights, I didn't get to see this game live, obviously. But the traveling supporters, and there were some there, and what an effort that was. 13-hour round trip, I think it is, to get from Sestao to Andorra, something like 700 miles, something stupid like 750 miles, I think it is, round trip. So yeah, they were there, but both the goals were scored down the other end, and I just thought at the very least they deserved to get the goals scored down their end. I was like, oh, that's not fair. But they did see big Herrerin, and I mean big Herrerin. I mean, agile in this occasion, fantastic save down to his right to maintain the win. They did see that one close at the least, but they didn't see the two goals. I'm sure they weren't that bothered. You know, what an amazing effort. I just think to go to that game, given how they played the weekend before against Gimnastica, and knowing where Andorra are at the moment, I think that is absolutely incredible effort from the fans that went, and I'm just delighted that they got that reward for it. Yeah,
absolutely, big. You know, clap, round of applause for those Sestao fans, and like you say, they've seen the win that gives them that hope now that they can get job done. And like you say, going to Andorra in the form that they were in is no easy feat. So I think they'll be galvanised by that result, and maybe they've still got a skin in the game to decide where the championship is going. Never mind their own survival battle as well. Speaking of which, obviously we've already noted that Gimnastica have joined Amorebieta, who by the way, don't know what happened with Amorebieta this weekend, but 3 players in my team of the week, because they were absolutely sensational with that 3-0 win. Unfortunately, it's come a little bit too late for them. But who is joining them in the relegation then this weekend, Liam? We've got Barça Athletic, Osasuna Promesas, Reunion, Sestao, Lugo, Unionistas and Arentero, all still in the mix.
Insane, isn't it? 7 teams. 3 of those 7 will go down. And I'll be honest, Nick, I've got absolutely no idea. I mean, I think Barça Athletic got the toughest job. Obviously, they have to win. They play Unionistas. They don't have to hope to Sestao Real Club lose. If they don't, they're done. If they would move above them on goal average if Sestao lose, because I think they've beaten them over the two games. But they'd also need Reunion not to win. If Reunion drew, they'd also move above Reunion on goal average. So let's hope that Bilbao Athletic do keep it real in that one. And they also need Osasuna Promesas to lose, because Osasuna Promesas have got the goal average over them. So I would think Barça Athletic are really up against it there, but they have to win. And that obviously makes life difficult for Unionistas, because they're playing Unionistas. Osasuna Promesas have got Valencia at home. I don't like them to survive, obviously, but I think Valencia hit the wall last couple of games, had two really poor results, because he loads of goals, not scored any. Real Union, I don't know. I think Bilbao Athletic just depends whether they can be bothered. You know, if that Filial turns up and plays at the best, Real Union shouldn't do anything. How about Sestao, River Club? Where do you rate them? Where do you rate their chances? They're outsiders at the bottom five at the moment, but what do you reckon?
Well, destiny is very much in their own hands, as I've mentioned. You know, they've got to do it, and they've got to do it in front of their own fans as well. But, you know, Ponfe won't be an easy game. They'll be keeping one eye on the happenings in Leon and thinking, we just got to do our job here. So it's a shame that they haven't got an easier opposition or someone who's maybe on the beach, so to speak, to finish that game. But I've got confidence in them that they can possibly get the result they need. I think as long as, you know, the likes of Osasuna Promesas and Real Union get worse results, a draw could do them as well, I suppose. You know, Barça Athletic could win and Sestao could draw and they'd still be fine. So interesting watch. I think that'll be the game that I'm going to be watching on Saturday as well, with one keen eye on from both ends of the table as well.
Yeah, I think you might have done your shirt for that one, might you? And then become go big on Sestao River Club for the evening. I mean, you mentioned Amorebieta there. I mean, Lugo, you said 4 points out of 6 from the new manager, but they're playing Amorebieta. They're away at Amorebieta. 3 weeks ago, I said that's an absolute shoe-in for the away side. Amorebieta have won the last 2 and scored 7 goals. So, you know, not such a shoe-in after all. I think Unionistas have got a real problem, because I think Barça Athletic will go there. Well, they won't go there because it's at home. So I think they will go all out for the win on their home pitch. Unionistas have to go to Barcelona and just hope that the results go against them elsewhere. And, you know, you did mention that if Sestao get a draw, I think they move ahead of Unionistas, because the goal difference will then come into play, because the goal average is the same. They drew both games, Unionistas and Sestao River Club. So, like you say, do Sestao need to win that last game? Possibly not. They just need to make sure they don't lose it, because I think if they lose to Ponfe, they probably are down. And then, of course, Alan Taylor come into it as well, who's we've not even mentioned them. We haven't thought about them, but they are going to Gymnastic. And ultimately, although that's a really tough away game for them, because Gymnastic are very good at home, you know, they're in the playoffs. Gymnastic, I'm not sure they're going to get above 5th place. So will they really be that committed? Will they rest a few? Possibly. I'm not sure. What do you think, Nick? I know what you want, but what do you think is going to happen?
So many permutations. I actually think we are looking at the finished article right now. I don't see too many movements down there. Or certainly that's what I would hope. And not because, like I say, I want to see Real Union go down. I just think with the law of averages and the fixtures we've got upcoming, the movement will be within the relegation zone, not out of it, in my opinion. So, but I'm not brave enough to stick £5 on it just yet, Liam. Let's put it that way. Let's turn our attentions to Grupo Dos, because they were your selections for the week. Can you give me a summary of the top 5, please?
Yeah, so you've heard this one before, Nick. The same top 5 as it has been for a couple of weeks. That is Ceuta, Real Murcia, Ibiza, Antequera, and Mérida. Again, so the only jostling there will be who finishes where behind Ceuta. The bottom 5 has one change. We know we've lost Intercity, obviously, already a few weeks ago. Recreativo have now gone as well. Fuenlabrada and Alcoyana are still in the bottom 5 as they were prior to the jornada kicking off. But Atlético San Eugenio's draw with Real Murcia means that they've got out of the bottom 5 for the moment at least. And Marbella losing away in Alcorcón means they've dropped into the bottom 5. And we should probably mention, you said I chose the Partidos de la Jornada for Grupo Dos. I didn't choose the games featuring either Mérida or Antequera this week, but they did both win. And that means that they're both in the playoffs, as I said at the start of this. So I don't know what you think of that, Nick, but I'm really pleased about that, to be honest.
Yeah, I think when you look at that queue of filiales just waiting and lurking outside the playoff zones, what was it? Castilla, Athletic Bay, and Sevilla Atletico, just all waiting to pounce. I think they're all on similar points as well, if I remember rightly. But yeah, you could see first of all, what it meant to the Merida fans to be in the playoffs. I think, it's a big step forward for them as a club, and probably caps a very good second half of the season for them. And, especially with their manager, potentially being looked at by clubs in the league above, they'll be thinking, well, actually, if we can do something here, let's, give ourselves the best chance of keeping him for another season. As well, we've spoken a lot about some of the clubs at this level who maybe aren't considered big clubs, but for me, they are a team punching well above their weight, in terms of resources, in terms of where they are, especially in the grand scheme of things. So yeah, brilliant to see them qualify for the playoffs too.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, yeah, part of it obviously is about the fact that they kept the filiales out, but I'm actually really pleased for both clubs in their own right that they made it, as you say, for the reasons you've given as well. That Merida, a real step forward for them, and Antequera, yeah, they're a minnow at this level. They might have big ambitions, but they're not a big club, and so tremendous to see them do that with teams with far greater resources sitting just outside the top five. And my games I did choose this week all ended up 0-0, Nick. Goal fest in my 3 games, but I wasn't too unhappy because Atletico San Kenya drawing 0-0 with Real Murcia meant that they moved out of the bottom 5. I quite like that club despite the chaos that's going on behind the scenes there. I'd quite like to see them stay in Primera RFEF. And of course, the draw between Atleti B and Ibiza meant that as Merida and Antequera both won, Atleti B couldn't make the playoffs. So those 2 results were just fine by me, although they weren't exactly laugh a minute highlights, let alone the full game. I was less happy with Ceuta 0, Yeclano Deportivo 0, especially because Pau Perez missed a penalty. And we saw him the week before and he dispatched it brilliantly. He went for the same penalty this week, didn't he? Only the trouble was he put it about 8 yards higher up than he did last week, the week before. So yeah, that was a shame. And even more irritating, although I don't really like VAR on the whole. Naranjo scores a perfectly good goal here, ruled out for a non-existent offside. Bloody annoying, if I may say so. But they did get a point, Yeclano Deportivo, and that does mean that they go into that last game, as with Sistan River Club in Group 1, Group 1, I should say, sorry. Their destiny's in their own hand, I suppose. They'll take that where they were a couple of weeks ago, and they were in the bottom 5. At least they now have a chance to save themselves in front of their own fans.
Yeah, they do, and I think that'll be, a big incentive for them, and similar for Atletico San Kenya as well, which I'm sure we'll come on to. But we look at that relegation scrap now. Obviously, not as many as 7 teams involved in this one. It's probably out of just the 5 that are there. I don't think Marbella can get above the likes of Betis Deportivo or Villarreal Bay. But they also play each other this weekend as well. So one of those teams is going to probably do better, or maybe they'll play for the draw and guarantee both of their safety. Who knows? But just looking about the teams that are in it there, Liam. So, Alcayano, Fuenlabrada, Thandiqueño, Yeclano and Marbella. Who do we think is joining Recre and Intercity in Segunda Ref next season?
It's tricky, isn't it? I mean, you look at the opponents. Alcoyana play Real Madrid Castilla, Fuenlabrada play Recreativo de Huelva, Atletico San Kenya play Hércules, Yeclano Deportivo play Intercity, and Marbella play Antequera. None of those sides have got anything to play for. There's no final day relegation, 6-pointer, death or glory kind of game. So you wonder whether all 5 of those teams might win, and 4 of them are at home. Only Atletico San Kenya are on the road. Alcoyana, Fuenlabrada, Yeclano, and Marbella all at home against teams with nothing to play for, because Antequera are the best side there, but unless they really bother at where they finish in the top 5, I'm not sure they'll be that fast. So I could see all 5 winning, to be honest, and I take that. The only sadness for me about that would mean that they would lose Alcoyano, and then obviously I'd much rather lose either Betis Deportivo or Villarreal Bay, but as you said, I think that's impossible now. So probably overall, that's probably the result I'd settle for. What do you think? What are you hoping for, and what do you think might happen?
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see, to be fair, because we talk about some of these teams not having anything to play for, but we look at the form of Amor Bieta, for example, recently, even Intercity last weekend, getting that win at home in Hércules Stadium at the Jose Rico Perez. So sometimes when we see teams that have been relegated, they just fancy it just to end the season a bit of a high, don't they? So those 2 sides that have got skin in the games there. Fuenlabrada's form recently, 4 defeats on the bounce. They just look, completely bereft of ideas. Recre could probably smell a bit of blood there and think, well, actually, let's go down swinging. Intercity as well. I just think if you know the atmosphere in Yekla is anything like we witnessed a couple of weeks ago, then you know they'll find it tough to go there. And like you said, with Antequera Marbella, Jose Galeon's final game, you know, is it one for him to do something miraculous, and Antequera thinking we'll rest ourselves ahead of a playoff campaign? Who knows? All to play for here again, same as Grupo Uno.
Very much so, yeah. Some great goals this week. I think that last week we had some good goals. I think this week we had some great goals. What I find quite amusing about this was I'd already picked up, obviously, Ezquerdo's goal for Ponfe. I mean, in terms of the significance of the goal, that has to be the goal of the week, doesn't it? Just because of the meaning of it. But Afri's goal I loved as well, as I mentioned. And I noticed that none of the shortlists seem to include Pedro Arena's goal for Osasuna Promesas. So I'm not sure if nobody actually watches any of the filial as well. I mean, it's an absolutely stunning goal. I bet you haven't seen it either, have you? It's an absolute beaut. Top corner from it. It's very similar to the goal that the Alcoyana player scored a couple of weeks ago. The left-hand corner. It's a right-hand corner of the box, curled in with his left foot, top corner. And that was 88th minute. I mean, although it knocked them, though they end up in the relegation zone at the end of it, it still could be a crucial point for Osasuna Promesas. Should also mention Carlos Doncel for Merida, and also a great strike from him, which secured the 3 points. And he's got 7 goals for them this season. And I think he was picked up last summer from Ceuta. So, you know, he's had a brilliant season there. One of the 3 players in their team that's scored loads of goals and made a big difference to their season. So, yeah, some great goals this week, not just some good ones. But it was quite funny to say in the short list that I saw Pedro Arena's goal had been basically completely ignored.
Yeah, no, I think, like I said, I picked up the Carlos Doncel goal on Twitter as well and shared that. And that got a lot of plaudits, let's put it that way, a lot of likes and stuff like that. A free as well also has his broken ground has really shattered the glass ceiling for us. He's the first player to be named back-to-back in the team of the weeks for us as well. I had to go back and double check this in case there were any replications or duplications, but he's the only player to have survived the usual weekly cut that we do for our teams of the week as well. So good for him. Shame we won't be here next season, but good for him nonetheless. Looking ahead to this weekend, Liam, obviously we've already said that we're going to be doing this wonderful live stream, so we're going to be watching some football, but you get the absolute delight of picking our Grupo Uno fixtures, where it's all still to play for. So which ones are you going with for this Saturday?
Yeah, fairly obvious that 2 of them are going to be Sestao River Club against Ponferradina and Cultu Leonesa against Andorra. I mean, the permutations are brilliant here, aren't they? I mean, what's going to happen in terms of Cultu Leonesa's outlook on this game, because they are 2 points clear. And let's not forget, the only silver lining from that defeat last weekend in the closing seconds, they've still won the head-to-head. So they only need a point in this last game to be champions. Doesn't matter what Ponferradina do, a point will give the title and obviously the promotion that goes with it. Andorra got beaten last week, as we've just said, and ultimately they can't be in that title race anymore. How bothered will they be? How nervous will Cultu Leonesa be? It's just like, how can you possibly see how this is going to pan out? It's incredible. And then I think after that becomes a little bit more difficult, but in the end I went for Barça Athletic against Unionistas, because that's the only game that I can see in which both sides still have something to play for. I think a point should be enough for Unionistas to survive. So I think that given what they've been doing the last few weeks, they've been quite negative in their approach. I suspect they will barely come out of their half unless they go behind. So the big question is, can Barça Athletic break them down? What have you picked out of Group 2? What did you like in Grupo Dos?
I'd like to query with a Spanish lesson, please, Liam. What is Spanish for park the bus? Because I think that's maybe what Unionistas maybe need to do this weekend.
Yeah. I'd like to say it's aparcar el autobús, because that would work perfectly, but I'm not sure it is. I think there is probably another expression for it. I will go away and find that one out for the live stream on Saturday, because I think Unionistas will certainly be aparcando their autobus on Saturday. I think a point's enough probably, and Barca I think are great going forwards. And I think that's I mean, Aki has been very negative overall out in the games I've seen. Them they certainly scored 1 goal, haven't they? I think in the games. Yeah. So you know, he's not absolutely been ripping it up from an attacking point of view. So yeah, I think that will be he'll try and make it a very low scoring game, and Barca Athletic will have to try and stop that from happening.
Definitely. Well, in Grupo Dos, for me, like I say, not an awful lot to play for at the top, with both the champions and the playoff slots all decided, other than just that jostling we keep referring to. So I'm going to go with 3 games down the bottom to see who can ultimately stay in Primera RFEF, but also have the absolute pleasure of being spoken about on El Pozo next season. So we've already spoken about all these 3 games in isolation, so I won't take up too much time. But Yeclano Deportivo against Intercity is my first one. I think we could maybe say where we'd like to put ourselves on this, Liam. We're very much in the corner of the the team from Yekla. But, you know, Intercity have shown last weekend that they were going down swinging. You know, that surprising win at home, I'm using air quotes on a podcast, against Hercules, you know, was interesting. But the job is simple for Hernandez's men. Win and survive. As we've mentioned a few times now, destiny is in their own hands. My second game is Marbella against Antequera. As mentioned, it's the farewell for Jose Callejon. I'm sure both sets of fans will want to give him a good bon voyage, because he is, you know, not been such a great player for just individual teams, but obviously for the national side as well. Brilliant career for him. Whether it be enough to give and galvanise Marbella to win, I don't know. But, you know, Antequera still technically have skin in this game, where, you know, they'll be looking at who they will be playing in the opposite group. I think at the moment they're due to play Andorra, because they're 4th and Andorra are 3rd. So again, if I was having Medina, I'd be thinking I want to get above that and try and get a more preferential game, a game a bit closer to home, let's not forget as well, and see if we can do something there. And my last one is Hercules against Atlético San Eugenio. Like I say, if anything, you know, from last weekend is to go by, Hercules are on the beach. So Atlético San Eugenio can go there and probably smell a bit of blood, seeing whether, you know, that's a genuine attitude. But at the end of the day, similar to the boys from Yekla, destiny's their own hand, win and survive. So let's see if they've got the incentive there to put in a performance at the Jose Rico Perez.
Yeah, I think there's the 3 games that could be 2 home wins and an away win. But yeah, you're right. I mean, the trouble with Callejon is he doesn't have, his team doesn't have their destiny in their own hands, does it? So, you know, they could win the game against a side that's in the playoff places and still go down. So we'll see how that pans out. And I would agree with you. Hercules against Atletico San Eugenio looks like an away win, doesn't it? Really, unless it's another one of these where Hercules rouse themselves and decide, you know, we owe it to our amazing fans, and they've got a great fan base there to finish on a high in front of them. You know, so we'll see how that one goes.
Yeah, I'll give an honourable mention as well to Alcayon against Real Madrid Castilla, but I didn't really want to signpost people on the last game of the Primera RFEF season to go and watch a bloody Filiales. But I do again hope Alcayon, you know, again, if they do go down, they've gone down swinging, because a few weeks ago we were saying they were dead and buried. They've managed to survive until the final game of the season. So let's see what they can do with the boys from the B team of Real Madrid, of which Lauren Zuniga was in your team of the week as well. That was a name I've not heard for a little while from my Malaga and Giricast days. So interesting to see he's managed to climb up the well from Real Madrid C as well. So interesting times. Just obviously going into the weekend, it's not the final weekend of Spanish Segunda football. There's still, I think, is it 2 or 3 more games left there? Is there anything we could be watching this weekend that's of interest?
Yeah, a couple of crackers. Mirandes against San Maria. I think you mentioned it, didn't you, on the Partido feed, that Mirandes, if they win the last 2 games, they're going to be in La Liga for the first time ever. Quite a remarkable story that would be. But Almeria, big Bucks team, they need the win as well. So that's the biggest game of the weekend by some distance. And then you've got Eldense fighting to stay alive in Segunda. Otherwise, they'll be joining us next year. They might well be, the way things are going. And they're playing Racing de Santander, who are in trouble at the moment, in danger of falling out of the top 6, having been well clear at one stage before Christmas at the top of the table. So 2 huge games there. I think it's 2 weeks to go. I'll certainly have half an hour on those, because those are happening on Sunday night. So very nice of them not to clash with our Saturday night commitments.
Yes, definitely. And one for checking out on El Partido this week with myself and Paul. We are doing a podcast called Shaping Clay. You care to have any punts or who or what we might be talking about there, Liam?
No, I've absolutely no clue at all. Not the faintest, which is good. I look forward to it.
Yes, it's going to be very interesting. It's going to be about Diego Forlan and Giuseppe Rossi's time with Villarreal, and how they managed to reignite these 2 talents after, you know, poor, you know, times at Manchester United, and turn them into world beaters. sort of similarly what Manuel Pellegrini is doing with Anthony this season, maybe. So good parallels and comparisons there, but looking forward just to talking about Diego Forlan, for being perfectly honest, because he is a player that I was obsessed with as a youth. But yes, that is everything for El Pozo this week. I'll say thank you to you, Liam, for joining me this evening. Gracias to you guys at home as well for listening, and we'll see you again soon on Saturday for El Pozo Live over on YouTube as well. So thank you very much. We'll see you then.
Hasta la próxima.